want you to focus on in your organisations is relationships. I want you to build and foster real human relationships in your organisation. And there's going to be some people who don't like what I'm about to say next. You know what? The recruitment industry is really, really bad at relationships. I've been working in this town and in Sydney for the last 15 years. About 60% of that work has come through contracts of some sort that have been brokered by a recruitment agent. And you know what? I reckon in that time, all the recruitment agents that I've met, maybe 5 of them, really cared about me as an individual rather than either churning the numbers through their database, getting their cut from the client. I'm not saying that's you guys. I'm saying that's what I get, that's what the feel that I get and the people that I talk to get from the industry at large. If what you guys focused on as recruiters was building strong relationships, both with active and passive candidates, making sure that you really understood what people's skills were, I would still get 3 or 4 approaches a week from recruiting agents who say, you know, we've got this CV of yours, but it's 5 years old and we're not quite sure what you're doing now, but maybe you would be interested in this job. If you spent 5 seconds looking for my name on Google or on LinkedIn, you would have more detail about me than your database could ever hold. It's not that hard. Now, I know there are some recruiting companies that are doing this now, and for those companies, they're doing a really good job, particularly when they fold that in to relationship management. For those of you that are managers or employers, in terms of relationships, if you understand your people better, if you understand what makes them tick, if you understand, as you said earlier, that they want to do work from home, or they have work-life balance issue because they need to pick up their kids at 3 o'clock every afternoon, or you know, they have a care responsibility for an elderly parent, those things are incredibly important for you to understand as a manager or an employer. Because what you can do is make sure that this thing stays high. If you understand your people really, really well, not only can you make sure that their working conditions suit their lives, but what you can also do is give them work that fits the context of what you employed them to do. Which is why I asked the question earlier about job fit. There are so many jobs that I hear about from people that I talk to where they themselves or people they know have been employed opportunistically. Oh, you know, we've got this hole and it's about this big and we need to fill it. But you know what happens? You fill the hole and the person might have the skills to do that job. But it's not necessarily the job you need done in 12 months' time or 2 years' time. Now look, that's a hard projection to make. I'm not arguing that. But if rather than employing people just to fill a hole, you really thought about the role first, you have an opportunity to do something that's incredibly beneficial for the organisation that you work with. And that's employing the right person with the right skills for the future rather than for now. The other thing around motivation is context. The number of people that I talk to that don't really understand how their job fits in the grand scheme of things, what all the inputs are that come into their job and why they exist, and what happens to all the stuff that they produce after it leaves them, is astounding. But research bears out that if you contextualise someone's job, if you make sure that they understand what the inputs mean and what the outputs mean in the larger picture of their organisation, their motivation is through the roof in comparison to someone who doesn't. Motivation is highly related to engagement. People are much more engaged in their jobs, as I said, if they're contextualised. And if you give them some autonomy, if you give people the ability to make decisions, to take actions and to resolve problems in their job, they're incredibly engaged. Apart from the social media folk in the room, who has heard of the company Zappos? Zappos are the Amazon of shoes, quite literally. In fact, they've been bought by Amazon, surprisingly enough. 1,600 people work at Zappos. And for every one of those people is entitled to answer the phone or an email or whatever and solve on their own the problem that anyone comes to them with. And you know what? They have astounding retention and they have astounding engagement because those people completely care about what their organisation does because they're empowered to do something for it. The other thing that Zappos do is put the phone number and email address of Tony Shea, the CEO, on every page on their website. Got a problem? Talk to Tony. How many of your organisations would put the phone number and email of the CEO on every page of your website? Particularly if, say, you work for a federal department, how many people are going to put the phone number and email address of the secretary on the front page or every page? Trust. Something the Zappos story tells us is that they trust their people because they've empowered them to solve problems. Trust's a massive factor. As Laurel said in terms of social networks, trust begets you an incredible level of power in those networks. I'm not talking power in terms of being able to exploit it, but power in terms of being able to do things for people. If you trust people in your organisations, your ability to get them to do things for you and for themselves and for their colleagues and for your customers and clients and stakeholders and suppliers, again, measurably higher. There's great McKinsey research and there's great MIT Sloan management research on this stuff. It also means that you don't treat your people like children. The number of organisations that I talk to with the work that I do, where I go in and say, you know what you should be doing? You've asked me this question when you end. I say, what should we be doing? I say, trust your people. Give them the ability to solve problems for people, to connect to anyone in any other part of the organisation, to go out and talk to your suppliers, to go and talk to your competitors. And I go, oh no, I wouldn't trust my people to do that. Then why did you hire them? If you don't trust them, why did you hire them? Trust is a major factor, I think, that's missing in a lot of recruiting.